to see so many people here this afternoon after a very fulfilling lunch. What I want to go through, some of the members of the audience have already heard certain parts of this presentation before at other meetings. So, but for the benefit of those who have not heard any of this before, I will go from the start, okay? First of all, you gave me a very pleasant welcome to Mumbai, and I realized that in the previous session of Presbymania, at the top table here was another Dr. Patel, like myself, and by sheer coincidence, the Dr. Patel, who's based here in Mumbai, is also very familiar with Scotland, because his wife is from there, and this is the reason why he left Scotland and decided to work in Mumbai, because he doesn't like the traffic there. Now, moving on swiftly, because we're running short on the time, all of you who are performing any kind of surgery for refractive surgery patients, whether they're presbyopic patients or what have you, you are all measuring both distance and near acuity. That's a fact. Okay? And also, we have seen several publications, several papers presented at this meeting, giving you impressions of quite complex, detailed optical systems for correcting vision and visual performance. But to give you a quick rundown, you can also measure high, medium and low contrast acuity in bifocal systems compared with single vision. But what's also important to know is that most of these designs that have been put together by industry, in general, as the distance acuity is very good, the near acuity will tend to be poor, and as the optics or the design of either the IOL or the corneal surface is changed, distance acuity tends to reduce as near acuity tends to increase, and the crossover point is a very important point here, because this determines the minutiae of the optical designs of these different types of systems for correcting vision and therefore vision performance. But the bottom line is this: in general, we know intuitively if the distance vision goes up, the near vision will go down, vice versa, conversely, when distance vision goes down, near vision goes up. Now, going by just that simple premise, what we can do is compare distance acuity with whatever system we have for correction with near acuity. This would give you a very simple two-dimensional pictorial representation to decide whether you have success or failure in your systems, whether it be presby-LASIK, whether it be intracore or supracore, doesn't matter. Either way, it would be a nice simple way to show that the two vision performances of distance acuity and near acuity, how well they are integrated. What I'm showing you here is some historic data. The first presby-LASIK patients that I was associated with was at the Visor Institute in Alicante, Spain, and that goes back to 2002. So here we are 12 years later, and we are still having a presentation later this afternoon concerning presby-LASIK and its other modifications. This device here was an experimental system we set up using wired patterns in the Patel optical system to measure distance and near acuity under identical conditions. And what we saw at that time was that the treating eyes tended to be in the top right-hand corner of this graph, compared with the normal age-matched patients who tend to be a little bit more drifting down towards the bottom left. Now that's important, because what it means is that in these kind of cases, if we drew this kind of graph, as long as our data, our patients are in the top right-hand corner, they are in seventh heaven. But if our data tends to be at the bottom left, then we've got a very, very poor performance. Okay? So it's a nice, simple way of showing whether we've got thumbs up or we've got thumbs down. good, bad. Seventh heaven, not so seventh heaven. So, using this simple approach, and some of this data Klaes will be familiar with because we published this together with Jorge Alio a few years ago. The old AccuSmart IOL, we looked at some of the post-operative distance acuity and near acuities in AccuSmart. These were the pre-op results. Obviously, they are down the bottom left. And post-op, we've got a bit of a spread of data. Some really good results, some good distance but poor near, some very good, some very good distance and poor near, some very good near but poor distance. So we've got a bit of a spread of data here to show how good or how bad the AccuSmart IOL happens to be. And the slide on the right-hand side is really just to show you the control effects when we used a single focus, single vision AccuSoft lens as a control. These were the pre-op and then the post. So we've got a nice simple way of showing distance and near acuity. Here, just to continue the theme, the first generation pseudo-accommodative IOLs, that's the 1845, the design that Stuart Cummings put together. Again, distance acuity post-op is pretty good. The near acuity, bit of a spread there, but there's not that much of a shift. But our Presby-LASIK first generation was quite dramatic. They intended using, this time, ordinary charts as opposed to the more complex experimental setup I showed you earlier. And here we can see these patients were at the bottom left before treatment, and most ended up in the top right. But there's a general tendency of distance acuity and near acuity being inversely related to each other. So continuing with this theme, we looked at some of the data that of Magda Rao's clinic, where she has had extensive experience of a range of near and distance correcting modalities, which is summarized in this chart here. And by looking at her data, which was independently corrected, what we found was there was almost an inverse relationship when we averaged the data out between distance uncorrected visual acuity and near uncorrected visual acuity. But the surprise was the Technis lens at the time, which was head and shoulders above the rest by being heading towards the top right, which is far better than what we have in this cluster at the bottom here, but all are well away from the bottom left. So, thumbs up, nobody ended up here. So what my message to you is, in all of your systems, the techniques, I ask you to look at your data again and draw this simple graph, and then decide, by using simple statistics, if you have something better or worse than its predecessors or comparative systems. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Very good idea.